What's up, everyone, and welcome to MSI Cooldown. At the conclusion of the 2022 Rumble stage, it was a battle between two titans here to close out the day, and it's T1 who take the final victory. Honestly, kind of love to see it, just in the sense of competition moving towards the knockout stage and seeing our two top teams trade 1-for-1 ultimately in the head-to-head.
Super fun game. I don't really feel, as we have established many a time, especially when Emily on the desk, is that this best of one, neither team was really going to reinvent the wheel, going to give anything away, especially considering the odds that they will face one another. Although, 2019 has taught us that nothing's set in stone. But just a really fun game where you see like Gumayushi continuing the form growth that he's had for the entirety of the split. Zhao, who having amazing cross-map plays all across the early game. Just really both these two teams kind of personified, and Owner being just the best.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a slow burn at first, Emily, but then it eventually did open up, and we got to see plenty of action-packed team fights between the two squads.
Yeah, and I think that is where you see T1's actual composition kind of come to fruition, because I know they made a call on Cast, the return to TF. That's been a super strong pick for RNG because of the way that Xiaohu knows side lanes like so well, and those cross-map plays that kind of characterized their 1-3-1 last year. But yeah, this is just, I love these two teams. I would love to see more games between these two teams, make no secret about that, just because of the mechanical skill and prowess you see in these team fights. And also, shout out in draft, we had the trade of bans. You ban out Waze Volibear, and then you ban out Owner's Vi.
Vi is the strongest champion in the game, so it makes perfect sense to me. If we do want to see more games between these two squads, given that they're first and second seeds, they will both obviously have to make it to the finals. We do await RNG's selection as the #1 seed for who they will face. They do have 2 hours to submit that, though, so for anybody who's curious, we'll wait up to that amount of time in order to figure out who they would pick. I think, as we take a look at the standings, that we all generally have a sense of who we would expect them to pick, given the fact that the 2 drop games they have, one is to G2, one is to T1.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot, but I do think G2 have a much better matchup into RNG stylistically than Evil Geniuses does. So, regardless of if EG had happened to win that game against G2, if I was RNG, I would still be picking EG just because, better stylistic matchup for me, in my opinion.
And if it does end up happening, I'm of course always going to have faith in T1, but that's matchup against G2, even with, the couple of losses that they got back-to-back, is never going to be a matchup where you're going to be really comfortable going into a best-of-5. This team has shown time and time again that they can bounce back. So that should also be, if that ends up being the semi, one that I'm really looking forward to.
Without a doubt. Let's put a little capper to the Rumble stage by talking about an individual player from each of our top 4 teams as we look towards those best-of-5s. I'm calling this key players, not necessarily identifying the best performing. So that's not our goal here, but to talk about players who either are the difference maker, for better or for worse at times, and those that will be putting a spotlight on as we move forward. Here we have it. We've got Gala for RNG, we've got Owner for T1, Jojo Pion for Evil Geniuses, and then Targamas for G2. Let's start at the far left of the list, Gala, RNG. We've said his name many a time, and I have a feeling we're going to keep throwing his name out there as the tournament rolls forward.
Yeah, I feel like I need to do my best Aux impression with just if Gala has a million fans. But yeah, Gala, I just want to continue to highlight his improvement from where he was at last year with RNG on that MSI championship roster to now. I think he's a much more well-rounded player. I think you can see him on a much wider variety of picks. His team fighting, I think, has only improved with the team itself. And if RNG are going to continue going on in this event, you know that Gala and his team fighting are going to be a massive part of it.
And we saw it in the previous game as well, right? Where Gala was in a matchup that I have to say, obviously the Lethality Xayah matchup was extremely favored into Aphelios, but here it didn't look necessarily super comfortable. And if he can't find the type of leads that RNG was able to find in many of their games, They are a little bit less explosive, and it was that explosiveness, you even saw it in one of the replays there, was also what got them their first win against T1.
It is scary to me that you describe Gala as better than his previous self when they were, at the time, the best team in the world, defending MSI champions. We'll see if he can keep that momentum rolling forward. From there, we jump to G2. We're talking Targamas on this one. I think that's an interesting pick because, by all accounts, not the name that we've spoken the most about on this roster.
And a name nonetheless that I think performed above expectations. And this is, of course, coming from the perspective that I heard of Targamas within the ERLs. That was a name that was often mentioned as like, this guy has to go to LEC at some point, right? And seeing him perform in the win against T1, him being able to deny Zeus the playmaking potential on that cannon, I think, was the key difference maker, even with how well Caps and Jankos played.
And I love when they do put him on the picks like the Pike, stuff where he can get early roam timers. We've talked about the strength of this G2 lineup being Jankos kind of being able to track in between timers where he can go early. Once Targamas is roaming, he can sync up with Jankos and do that exact same thing to kind of disrupt the map early. And then his team fighting has also been really great. So
got a lot of love for this next name for many a reason, both his social game and his in-game play. It's EG's Jojo Pyun.
Yeah, so I'll take this, I guess, as the other NA person on the desk. I love Jojo. I interviewed him before he ended up starting in LCS this year, and his big thing is like, he's like, I don't know why you would not want to be confident in yourself, because confidence will always serve you really well, right? I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said something to that effect in an interview with me. I think the most interesting thing for people who may not have heard of him coming from NA Academy to this team and wondering why the focus was on him, he's not someone we think of as like, oh my gosh, he's going to take over the game with like these massive carry picks. But the way that EG play around him is, again, having inspired and Vulcan kind of setting him up on the map for set plays on stuff like the TF, on stuff like the Rise domestically, and then now in this tournament we've seen like Ari, the Galio, things like that. I think if EG are going to make it any further in this event, Jojo is certainly going to be at the center of that.
And at the end of the day, youngest player in the entire tournament. Yep. Not everything's a hit, right? There's been hits and misses for him, but largely impressed with just his overall showing at such a young age. That leaves us one final player on the side of T1, and we're heading to the jungle for this one. It's Owner.
And I already talked, if you count the opening day, about how this player was not only a key difference maker in seeing T1 go from the team that they were last year in spring and the early summer, where there were so many issues, where the roster wasn't set, they couldn't find the cohesiveness that they were looking for. And he brought kind of the stableness that they really had been lacking up until that point in time, got the spring finals MVP, out-jungling Canyon, which is in of itself like as much, and Peanut as well, but Canyon to me is always the most impressive part because that was basically the entirety of the team, right? For Damwon, as the rest of the team was having a really, really rough time. And then in addition to that, as Lee Sin has risen in priority throughout basically the last couple of days of Rumble, we also see him kind of get back the confidence that I was kind of lacking in the early days.
Yeah, there was plenty of discussion, and a number of the pro players on the MSI stage were quick to remove Lee Sin from the equation and their pools on the outset of play in this tournament. But more and more creeping back into the conversation and becoming a playmaker. We even heard the casters themselves talking about it in this game. Hey, you know, in a late game team fight, as much as you can argue that Lee Sin does not scale, you still find that right angle, and you can be as effective as anyone else out there on the map.
I mean, we just saw it in that replay, right? With him from this previous game being able to just to get immediately onto Gala, feed Kumayushi another kill, you know, being able to target the enemy AD carry who doesn't have as much mobility. Perfect. And I mean, I'm just glad that obviously it took a little while, but I'm glad that to see that pick coming out from a lot of these playmaking junglers we still have left in this tournament.
Now, what about holistically? We move from the individual players to the four teams themselves. For example, where are you now? How do you reflect on T1's overall Rumble stage performance?
Slightly less than expected.
Okay.
I personally also said at the beginning of the week, I wouldn't be surprised if T1 dropped games left and right. right? Like this team loved games to Hanwha Life, which don't have Chovy anymore, so they're not very good. And in best of ones, you're always going to get that. I think the players themselves also clearly had way too high expectations, way too much pressure on themselves. And as that has kind of dropped, I think they're closer to the form that we expected, and this final game against RNG should be a really good indicator of their level going onward in the tournament.
Fair enough. We'll bounce right back here in just a moment to talk about the rest of the teams. For now, FLICKR took down his mid lane rival in Xiaohu, and the GOAT himself is now standing by with Lore in the Verizon post-game interview.
And welcome back to Busan for the final interview of the Rumble stage. FLICKR joining me right now after beating RNG the second time around. 안녕하세요. Thank you very much for joining me. How do you reflect on today's performance against RNG?
인터뷰 너무 감사드립니다. 방금 RNG전 어땠나요?
저희가 할 수 있는 플레이들을 다 할 수 있었던 것 같고 또 팀원들이 다들 잘해서 이길 수 있었던 것 같습니다.
I think we were able to pull off all the plays that we could try, and I also think our teammates were doing a fantastic job, so we were able to get this victory.
It was an amazing victory indeed, but it's been a challenging Rumble stage, I feel, for T1. Tell me about the process of solving the issue you've been through.
사실은 럼블 스테이지가 T1에게 쉬운 과정은 아니었어요. 어떤 식으로 조금 문제를 해결해 나갔나요?
저희가 문제점을 좀 다방면으로 이야기하기 위해서 다 같이 의견을 냈고 그런 것들을 좀 잘 조율했기 때문에 좋은 결과가 있었던 것 같습니다.
So everyone kind of participated in the communication to solve the issue, and we were able to find great outcome.
That is amazing. Would you say that this hard time are behind you now moving forward to the knockouts?
이제는 어려운 시간은 다 뒤로 하고 앞으로 노크아웃 스테이지에 잘 진행할 수 있을 것 같나요?
충분히 잘 진행할 수 있을 것 같고 저희가 스프링 때 좀 보여준 모습을 이번 럼블 스테이지에서 많이 못 보여준 것 같은데 4강과 결승전에는 확실히 좀 보여줄 수 있게 하겠습니다.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we were not able to showcase the spring T1 during the Rumble stage. So I'm looking forward to showing the best T1 throughout the knockout stage.
No doubt that during the best of 5 T1 will be a different beast. But now more about you, FLICKR. This is your first international event in Korea. T1's legacy is often mentioned in your videos. What does this MSI mean to you personally?
그럼 이제 페이커 선수 개인적인 부분에 집중하고 싶습니다. 이제 처음으로 한국에서 열리는 국제전에 참가하고 계신데 T1의 유산에 관련된 내용을 항상 보면 이제 페이커 선수가 빼질 수 없고 페이커 선수도 그런 부분에서 항상 T1의 유산에 대해서 항상 같이 언급하게 되는데 이번 MSI는 그런 어떤 의미가 있나요?
한국에서 개최하는 대회인 만큼 또 팬분들도 많이 오시기 때문에 그만큼 더 열정적이고 재미있는 것 같고 그리고 그런 팬분들을 위해서 꼭 우승하고 싶습니다.
Yeah, because it's happening in Korea, so many fans are showing up to support us. It's more energetic. I get so many energy from them, so it's more entertaining as well. So I really wish we can win the trophy for them.
Amazing boost from the fans, no doubt. Well, FLICKR, 인터뷰 감사합니다. 화이팅 하세요.
감사합니다.
Thank you so much for the translation, and Dash, back to you in Cooldown.
Thank you so much, Lore. FLICKR and the rest of T1 delivering a victory as the final game in front of the home crowd. That's got to feel good for them and be a big boost moving into that knockout stage.
Yeah, it's easy to forget, but T1 haven't been able to bring home a trophy in front of the South Korean crowd, right? So that I think it's cool that he mentioned that, and you know, it would obviously mean a lot for him and T1 to be able to do that.
When you've won so much that people make just assumptions, right? Like you would have assumed that at this point he has done it in front of a home crowd.
Yeah, I heard that stat and I was like, that can't be true. And I was like, it is.
Pretty wild to say the least, and they do it again, pushing into the knockout stage by taking down the #1 team in the standings in RNG. And so RNG, all right, slipping up at the final hurdle, but still squarely in solid position. Let's just real quick, what's the word I'm looking for? Summarize how we feel about RNG's Rumble stage performance.
Effectively the same, right? Like they had an incredible run. The consistency is something that I think LPL teams struggle generally more with than LCK teams. LCK, especially if you look at like Lost Worlds, for example, all did extremely well in like the best of ones because generally they're very stable teams. And RNG always has been kind of like the different, compared to the rest of the LPL teams, they've kind of been the weird one out in many a way. But I would still not be shocked, right? Like, we've seen how incredibly strong this team is. And I expect their eventual opponent in semis to have a really tough time.
Speaking of, a reminder before we close out our show that you will find the semifinal matchups and schedule within the next 2 hours on our socials at LOL Esports. We all wait on bated breath to find out exactly, even if we think we know the way it's going to go. The semifinals, they start on May 27th, so mark your calendars. we're going to shut this studio down. We're going to go get some rest. And we're going to prep for those very sick best of fives. What was that? You don't want me to shut it down? You want to hang out a little bit longer?
Tiebreakers.
That's fine. I'll chill with you. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody in that control room over there wants me to close this show.
No.
They've been here just as long as we have. It's been a long but epic day to close out our 5-day stretch of the Rumble stage. Thank you all so much for coming along the ride with us. Until we see you on May 27th, stay safe, stay healthy, and be good to each other, all right? Good night. Thomas due with a collapse. 2 spots. 3 teams, all carrying the hopes of an entire region on their shoulders.
Well, there's the flash crash down. Does get the Featherstorm out immediately. Ventaki, where's the follow-up? Blade Caller just tears him to shreds. It's a double kill now for Unified.
Oh, wait, he's gonna try to steal this.
He's in there. There's no smite around, right? He can kind of solo this one, but his health bar is gonna be low. He's gonna get it. It went to 5 health, but he ticked it down. Wei finally secures an objective.
Xiaohu Wei continues to look for the fight. It's 3v2 right now. Xiaohu flashes the Predator, the chase. The winds of war find their mark and inspired will fall.
Bye-bye.
And they can chase Caps while sending Tristana mid. Johan, big damage, sidesteps that one. The flash follow Caps. But here we go.
Now the full commit on the bottom side. Guma already so incredibly low. Unified stepping forward. And what is happening? T1, it was so perfect. It was so controlled. And now it's just a mess.
Get him out of the way of the stun as Carrier goes in. Now it's his turn to try and find that engage. Decent knockback there onto Zeus, but he's going down low. Double kill for Jaegos already in the team fighter's Caps.
It is huge for G2 Atlas.
A messy fight, but EG, 4 members standing strong as Froggy and Hotbed are on the retreat. About Shogun as he falls. BJ also falling to the backside, inspired stronger in the 1v1 overall. The absolute BM. Vygar, no more cage to keep him safe. Big shutdown to the side of Impact.
This bottom side play because they're chasing down.
Kick back. Big.
Oh, Nautilus lift, no way!
I mean, I'm losing it.
And everything is left to be decided here on our last day.
Well, they burned down Baron. Looks like they're gonna try right now. Inspired. 2K health smite. It's gonna go to Evil Geniuses. And I've seen this before. Evil Geniuses in the North River taking down the enemy team. He's burning. He's blinking. Please send one a hero. Has to be careful. Going right back in. Wilcox the knockup on a 1. Stopwatch burn. And G2 mop the floor with RNG.
GG looking for a little bit more. Vulcan going in with the hook. He's going to get him. Follow up from
Get back here.
The passive daddy.
The Evil Geniuses have scaled their way straight through the Rumble stage. Matter of fact,